We are following breaking news for you. You are looking at a picture outside O'Hare International Airport where a plane has slid off the runway. We have learned from the FAA that this was a United Airlines flight 734, Boeing 737. It was inbound to O'Hare from San Francisco. We're told it rolled to the end of the runway on landing. This happened at about just before noon today. We don't have any reports of injuries at this point in terms of passengers on board that plane. We know the FAA is investigating. You can see the plane there. You can see a number of emergency vehicles surrounding the plane. You can also see snow on the ground there at the airport. It is snowing lightly there. They're not getting the type of weather we've been talking about on this program. Just an inch or two in terms of accumulations, but that's enough to make runways rather slippery. We know the temperatures there, according to forecasters, are in the low 30s, and the snow has been continuing through the afternoon. So that obviously may have contributed to this plane sliding off the runway. We have Mark Rosenker on the phone with us now, former NTSB chair. Mark, you're aware of what's going on here. Tell us what is likely happening on the ground around the plane.
Well, they're certainly wanting to make sure that the aircraft and the passengers and crew are all okay. The way this sounds is they were still, as they came in, they were able to do the braking, but not enough to stop the aircraft totally, and it did seem to slide off into a grassy area, which was off runway 9 left at the north end of the airport.
From the picture we're looking at, it doesn't look like there is tremendous damage. It doesn't appear that the plane crashed into anything. In your opinion, speculating, is it likely that there are injuries on this plane, or would you say it's more than likely that the passengers and the crew are okay?
Given the fact that this is a landing, everybody was supposed to be tightened up with their belts on. All of the heavy equipment, computers, that type of thing, would have been in a secure area. Odds are no one was hurt. We probably would have heard about something by now. The crew would have reported any injuries and thereby had first responders quickly get them off. So thus far, we have a good reason to believe that this aircraft just rolled off the runway because it was a slick area that it hit, and that hopefully they'll be able to tug it back on and thereby then take it back for inspection and making sure that it is airworthy.
And we're looking at video of the runway, the area surrounding O'Hare International Airport, and you can see that there's clearly snow on the ground. They haven't gotten much in the way of accumulation, maybe a half an inch to an inch of snow. It's cold outside. We're expecting large amounts of snow across the East Coast, D.C., New York City. How dangerous is it when runways are covered, even with just a little bit of snow?
It can become very, very serious. I have seen accidents. We've investigated accidents at the NTSB when aircraft have landed and overshot the runway. And even, a matter of fact, I remember one in Midway back in December of 03 or 04 when the airplane slid off the runway and actually slid onto a street, killing a little boy.
What types of precautions can, airports take to make the runways more safe when we have winter weather like this? I know that a number of flights have been canceled in Philadelphia and airports in anticipation of the big storm that's coming to the Northeast. But what can be done on these runways to sort of make it safe to continue to travel while there's winter weather? And at what point do airports shut down and say, you know what, it's just too dangerous, there's no flying?
Well, they do continuously look at the actual friction level, so the coefficient of the friction, and that way they're really trying to understand when, in fact, it has become too slick to actually allow aircraft to land. At that point, they end up asking, they either close the runways temporarily until they're able to actually clean the runways up to where they get more traction and friction, or they, in fact, they send aircraft to other airports where it is safer to land. This is nothing that we have not seen before. These are judgment calls by, it's very, very subjective, although there are some objective criteria which are used to make these decisions. We're getting reports from pilots that have landed before talking about the friction level so that they can say it's either good, fair, or poor, or nil. And at that point, when you get nil reports, you begin to say we are shutting down that particular runway.
Do we know if there have been any reported problems up to this point at O'Hare?
I have not heard yet. This is obviously a serious situation when an aircraft runs off a runway, and until we understand exactly what happened, and they will be listening to the cockpit voice recorder and taking a look at the flight data recorder to try to understand exactly what happened here.
Is there a possibility in a situation like this that it's pilot error in combination with a slick runway, but also the pilot not sticking the landing properly in these conditions?
Yeah, these are very challenging conditions. Now, again, these people that are flying these large aircraft like the 737 for a major carrier like United have significant amounts of experience, tremendous training. We don't know if there was an unusual gust here that pushed it off, or if, in fact, he landed too long, or a whole host of things. There could have been a mechanical issue. We just don't know. That will be revealed when you begin to do the forensic investigation that will come following this. And a lot of the data will come from the flight data recorder, the cockpit voice recorder, and clearly interviews with the cockpit crew and the air traffic control.
If you're just joining us now, we want to update you. We're following breaking news. A United Airlines flight 737, inbound to O'Hare from San Francisco, was landing at O'Hare International Airport in Chicago when it rolled to the end of the runway. It was landing at 11:55 this morning. We can see emergency crews on the scene now. That plane sliding, rolling off the runway. On the phone with us is Mark Rosenker, former NTSB chair. Mark, we're talking about the investigation that will follow. How long and intense will the investigation be, and at what point will we see passengers and crew deboarding the plane?
Well, they're obviously wanting to make sure that everyone is okay. They're going to make sure that they can get a tug out there to try to get the airplane back onto the runway. And if it can get back, they'll either tug it all the way back, or they may even be able to taxi the airplane. But they're wanting to make sure everything is okay and that the equipment, the actual landing gear, the carriage nose wheel, all of that has not been damaged.
You mentioned we've seen things like this before. In some cases, unfortunately, an accident like this has led to deadly consequences. You mentioned a young boy being killed because a plane actually slid off the runway and onto a road, I believe. How common is this? How often do we see planes, sliding off runways, sometimes crashing when there's just a little bit of snow on the ground? Because they only have about a half an inch of snow there in Chicago.
That's a good question, and that's why there'll be a lot of questions which will require answers, both from the crew, the airport authorities that were maintaining the runway itself, and the air traffic control folks. All of those people will have to answer some questions that will give some answers to the investigators to try to understand what happened. How common is it? When you think about the fact that we have more than 30,000 operations that occur every day in the United States without incident, without accident, these things occasionally will happen, particularly in the winter months. We will see this where a pilot or a crew lands and they depart the runway because of slippery conditions. So the vast majority of times, all we see is some inconvenience because it takes a while to get the airplane inspected and get it back. onto the tarmac and the runway and the taxiways to get it back to the gate. But in this particular case, we just don't know yet. It's still very, very early. This incident only occurred less than an hour ago.
Okay, Mark Rosenker, former NTSB chair, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate your insight. We want to go now to a passenger on that plane is on the phone with us, Don Dodge, on that flight. Don, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So I understand you were still on board the plane, and
Yes.
Tell us what happened as the plane tried to make a landing.
Yeah, it was a pretty routine landing. We're coming from San Francisco, landing in Chicago. Routine landing, stop, touchdown. We just didn't stop. We kept sliding down the runway and eventually slid off to the left-hand side of the runway, and the plane is completely off the runway. No one was screaming or no one was scared. Unless you were looking out the window, you wouldn't even know that we went off the runway. It was very gentle.
So passengers and crew remaining very calm there. Was anyone injured?
No, no one was injured. And then, again, unless you were looking out the window, you wouldn't even know that we went off the runway. It seemed normal.
So it sort of felt like you were sliding down as you would, but instead of coming to a stop, you just sort of kept sliding.
Yeah, the only thing that was unusual was we didn't slow down as fast as you typically do. And I thought, hey, wait a minute, how come we're not slowing down? We just kept going down the runway.
And what was going through your mind as this was happening? Were you frightened, or was it slow enough that it wasn't too scary?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't frightening. No one was scared. No one was screaming or anything. It was just we were watching out the window, and towards the end, we just sort of slid to the left, completely off the runway, and came to a stop. Then the captain came on and said, "Remain in your seat, seatbelt fastened," and then the emergency crews started coming.
Describe to me, if you can, what the scene is immediately outside the plane. If you can look out your window, we can see the emergency crews on the ground there. And also, what have you been told in terms of getting off the plane? How long are you expecting to sit there?
Well, there's about 150 passengers, and I would say about 100 of them are off now. We're still on. So they have a temporary stairway on the back of the plane, and then you get onto these little shuttle buses that will take us back to the terminal. But I'm still on the plane right now.
There are instances where we see planes skidding, sliding off the runway when there are slick conditions. Thankfully, this one, ended without anyone getting hurt or injured. No collisions, no crashes. Given the large snowstorm that is, on its way to hit the East Coast, the Northeast, does this give you pause in terms of flying in inclement weather?
A little bit. I've flown almost 2 million miles on United, and I've never had anything like this happen. But thank God it happened in Chicago, because if it happened in Boston, where I usually fly, when you slide off the runway in Boston, you're in the ocean. So that would not be good.
Right. I'm sorry, continue.
Oh, but in Chicago, it's fine. We're just off in the ditch in the snow, and it's no problem.
So you mentioned that they're slowly deboarding the plane. There are temporary stairs where passengers are able to exit. You said about 100 people have exited so far. There are 50 of you left. How long has this process been taking, and how much longer do you expect to be on board?
It's been about an hour so far, and I expect we'll get off in the next 20 minutes or so. So most people are probably going to miss their connection, me included. And I may be staying in Chicago for a couple of days until I can get out of here. But everyone's pretty calm, and it's fine. No one's hurt.
Well, we're glad to hear that some of the biggest problems will be missed connections, because, as you said, this could have been a much more problematic scenario. Don Dodge, passenger on that plane that rolled off the runway at Chicago's O'Hare. Don, thank you so much for talking to us. We're glad you're safe.
Well, thank you.